Hello, and welcome to another video. My name is Alex, or Poetaster, if you know me as an internet person. In this video, we're going to take a look at my latest commission piece, the Casio MT-400V. In this video, I'm going to take you over to the bench, talk about some of the different mods I did, show off how they work a little bit, and then the last part of the video will be just some sound demos of some patches I was able to put together with it. So if you're just here to hear some cool circuit vent sounds, I've got you covered. There should be little timestamp thingies. You can just jump ahead to that. But anyway, before we jump over to the bench, it always feels weird to say, but just briefly, appreciate everyone who likes and subscribes to these things. It genuinely does help a lot. So just thank you to everyone who takes the time to do that. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump over to the bench and take a look. Alright, so just to start, we'll demonstrate some of the functions on this keyboard. So the first thing, just kind of starting at the top and working our way down the left side here, we have a clock mod. So here we've got our normal Celesta sound. Now if I turn on the clock mod, you can hear it's kind of different than like a normal kind of clean pitch bend that you might get with a similar mod. But it has some really interesting effects. For instance, so it has some interesting effects on the tone overall, but where it gets really interesting, I think, is if you kind of start up a rhythm, crank the tempo up, and then kill the clock. You get this really interesting, almost kind of like, I don't know, Game Boy percussion out of it. And then you can especially mix that by using the filter on the rhythm. And that's a good segue into the next section, which are these two controls here. And these really are just taking the trim pot adjustments for your resonance and your cutoff depth, and giving you a little extra control so that you can kind of change the range on these sliders a little bit. So for instance, if we want to make it tweet a little bit, we can bring that resonance right up. And this one is set up, you can make it self-resonate, so you be careful with this one. I'm going to make it scream a little bit. And then, while we're on the subject of drums and tempos, these switches over here are actually connecting the various drum signals. So, for instance, I can mute kick drum part just by flipping that mute, bring it back in. Same thing with the snare. Same thing with any of the hats. And then these three switches here just kind of reroute some of those signals. So for instance, I could reroute the snare signal to the clav. And it's a little hard to hear when they're both on, but if I cut the snare, That's starting to come through. Now I've got it swapped so that I'm just routing the snare over to the closed hat. Then I can also route the closed hat over to an open hat. And kind of jumping back over here, we've got an arpeggiator. So the chip in this thing actually has an arpeggiator function built in that some of the other synths use. I want to say the MT-68, 69, something like that. Actually makes use of this function from the same chip. So using a little guide online, and again that's linked in the resources below. But using that guide, I was able to kind of rebuild that circuit and kind of bring the arpeggiator back onto this keyboard. So I'll just demonstrate how that works. First off, it does kind of work off the same like chord function that controls, like the Casio chord and the bass. So we'll get our rhythm started again. Actually, I'm going to do it without the clock mod. So once you get your rhythm going, next you kind of get your chord going. Next, if we turn the arpeggiator on, I've got a volume adjust on it. And then, kind of like like you have on the bass and the chord variations, you've got 4 variations. So you've got those 4 different variations of the arpeggio, your volume adjust, and then finally this switch lets you route where the arpeggio is going. Right now I have it going directly out, but if we want to swap that, I can route it along the same path that the tone is going down. And what that lets me do is I can put the stereo chorus on it. I don't think the sustain or reverb work on it, but the filter controls do. So if I wanted to use that filter, you can kind of shape that sound up. So the arpeggiator on this thing is pretty cool. And then lastly, we've got some other controls over here. I'll kind of start at the top and work my way down here. But the first one is the sustain and reverb. This thing has a built-in switch that lets you turn sustain on or reverb on. But technically, with the chip, you could have both on at the same time. So this chip, this switch just connects those points on the chip so that you can have both. And really, no matter what position the regular switch is in, it'll have sustain and reverb on the tone if that switch is flipped. Similarly, we've got an octave down button. Now this only works in the chord modes. What it does is it drops the octave of this upper section. So that's useful in conjunction with the arpeggiator if you want to play lower parts while the arpeggiator's going, since it does have to be in that chord mode for that to work. And then finally is a hold button, which just makes a key hold. And as you can see, it will just hold until it runs out of polyphony, and then it'll start cycling through. So these envelope controls are the last thing, and these are really interesting. And essentially, it varies a bit based on which preset you choose, but they change up essentially the original wave shape, pre-filter or any of that. So just as an example, let's swap over to our, okay, it's flute. Now if I turn the first envelope mod on, you can hear it gets a little punchier. And then the second mod, second envelope mod, you can hear the release changes a little bit with that one. And if you turn both on, you get both effects. And now, you'll notice on that one, it's pretty darn subtle, the change, but, for instance, on this mandolin, it's kind of a much more noticeable change. That second layered sound, the attack changes on it. And the second envelope mod gives us that, like, kind of effect. So those are the mods and kind of a rundown of what they do. For the next section, I'm just going to kind of mess around with it, try to design some weird sounds, and just kind of show that off.